The ocean unleashed a fury unlike anything anyone aboard had ever witnessed. What began as a tranquil cruise quickly spiraled into a relentless battle against nature's raw power. Towering waves, colossal as skyscrapers, crashed violently against the ship, bending steel and shattering glass with terrifying force. Panic erupted. Passengers' screams piercing to the thunder's roar as the storm tore mercilessly across the decks, leaving devastation in its wake. This was no ordinary tempest. It was a monstrous force, rated at the highest level of danger. What unfolded next pushed every soul on board to the brink of survival. This is a story of how a luxury cruise transformed into one of the most harrowing, unforgettable battles against the sea ever captured on camera. There's tough, and then there's the kind of tough that hits you like a fist from the ocean itself. When sailors need to measure just how wild the sea has become, they turn to the Beaufort scale, a clever system devised by British Admiral Sir Francis Beaufort back in the early 1800s. This scale rates the ocean's fury on a scale from 0 to 12, capturing every mood swing the sea can throw. At Beaufort 0, the ocean is as calm as a sleeping giant. No waves, no drama, just peaceful water stretching endlessly. But hit Beaufort 12 and you're in full hurricane territory. Here, winds roar louder than a toddler denied candy, and waves tower over 46 feet, ready to swallow anything in their path. This scale isn't just for sailors and weather buffs. Cruise ship passengers might want to keep an eye on it too, especially when their floating palace starts feeling less like a resort and more like a blender set to high speed. When a storm reaches Beaufort 8, things get seriously spicy. Winds blast between 39 and 46 miles per hour, and waves rise between 18 and 25 feet. Suddenly, your leisurely shuffleboard game is canceled, and so is your dignity as you slip and slide across the deck like a pinball. At Beaufort 10, the sea turns savage. Winds slam it up to 63 miles per hour, and waves swell to 30 to 40 feet. The captain's polite request for everyone to stay in their cabins is really a lifeline, unless you fancy the sensation of living inside a washing machine. But it's at Beaufort 12 where the ocean shows its true monstrous face. Massive waves crash with relentless fury, howling winds tear through the air, and rescue helicopters hover desperately in the chaos. It's the full horror show, a terrifying reminder that the sea doesn't care if you just ordered a piña colada. It's big, it's moody, and it demands respect. The storm at Port Canaveral. August 2019, Port Canaveral, Florida. The Independence of the Seas, a colossal Royal Caribbean ship, was just chilling at the dock, probably dreaming of a calm day ahead. But then, bam, a surprise storm crashed the party, bringing chaos nobody saw coming. The skies darkened fast, and Mother Nature unleashed her fury. Torrential rain, fierce winds, and, wait for it, funnel clouds and water spouts popping up like they were on a mission to wreck vacation vibes. This massive ship, weighing tons, was tossed around like a toy in a tempest, swaying and rattling under the storm's brutal grip. Inside, passengers and crew clung to anything they could find, holding on tight as debris whirled outside like a demolition derby gone wild. Panic rippled through the halls, drinks nearly spilled and nerves frayed. But through it all, the Independence of the Seas and its crew stayed cool, steady hands at the helm, handling the chaos like seasoned pros. Though the ship took some minor exterior damage and the storm rattled everyone's nerves, no serious injuries were reported. It was a white-knuckle, grip-your-chair kind of moment, a terrifying ordeal turned unforgettable tale once everyone finally made it back to dry land. March 3rd, 2019, what began as a typical day aboard the Norwegian Escape quickly spiraled into a nightmare no one aboard would ever forget. Over 4,000 passengers set sail from New York City, their minds filled with dreams of fruity cocktails and tranquil sunsets. But instead of paradise, they were handed front-row seats to one of nature's most brutal rage-fueled performances. Just hours into the voyage, the colossal 1,690-foot cruise ship was slammed headfirst into a savage Atlantic storm. We're talking hurricane-force winds roaring like an angry beast, and waves towering so high they could reach the top floors of a skyscraper. The ship groaned and shuddered beneath them, shaking like a creaking giant on the verge of collapse. Thunderous bangs echoed through the hull, and the entire vessel vibrated beneath passengers' feet as if it might tear apart at any moment. Glass windows exploded like fireworks, sending shards slicing through the air. Furniture, chairs, tables, lamps, skated wildly across the decks, as if fleeing the chaos. Passengers scrambled, dodging flying lounge chairs in what felt like a surreal oceanic game of dodgeball. Some weren't so lucky, suffering bruises and bumps that would turn into wild stories around future Thanksgiving tables. Amid the turmoil, the crew emerged as heroes. Sprinting to the pandemonium, they soothed terrified passengers and wrestled with shattered furniture like seasoned warriors. Their calm and courage held the ship together, literally and figuratively. Despite the storm's wrath, the Norwegian Escape lived up to its name. No lives were lost, and only a handful of passengers needed hospital care for minor injuries. Once the skies cleared, the ship was patched up, cocktails resumed flowing, and tales of survival spread faster than the ship's free Wi-Fi. Surviving a hurricane on a floating luxury hotel? That's a vacation story you won't find on a fridge magnet, but it's one no passenger will ever forget. March 2019 handed crews lovers a chilling reminder that the open sea is never to be underestimated. The Viking Sky, carrying over 1,300 passengers and crew, was slicing through Norway's waters when everything spiraled into disaster. In the heart of a relentless storm, the ship's engines decided to give up completely. Without power, the Viking Sky drifted helplessly toward Norway's jagged coastline, like a giant rubber duck caught in a wild current. Inside, chaos erupted. Passengers gripped furniture, clutched life jackets, and held on to their sanity as water surged through shattered windows. Chairs, tables, anything not nailed down became dangerous projectiles, turning the ship into a floating battleground. The storm was so savage that the crew couldn't even launch the lifeboats. No orderly evacuation here, just raw survival. What followed was one of the most daring helicopter rescues in maritime history, with the ship pitching violently and winds threatening to throw rescuers and passengers alike into the abyss. Norwegian crews airlifted 479 people, one by one, from the trembling deck. The kicker? This near catastrophe was triggered by something as simple and avoidable as low oil levels. A tiny oversight that transformed a luxury cruise into a high-stakes thriller. Mechanics everywhere probably shed a tear. When the Viking Sky finally limped back to port, it left behind a trail of unforgettable memories, seasickness, horror stories, and for some, scars that went far beyond the physical. Next time, maybe check the oil before you set sail. The rough docking in Cozumel. Imagine this. The Canaveral Glory, a massive 952-foot giant, cruising smoothly toward the lively Mexican port of Cozumel, ready to dock after what seemed like a perfect trip. What could possibly go wrong? Well, enter the drama. As the ship neared the dock, the sea decided to stir up trouble. Strong currents and gusty winds turned what should have been a routine docking into a battle of control, pushing and pulling the huge vessel like it was trying to park in a puddle. But this puddle was a stormy mess of waves and chaos. Then, in a moment that felt like slow-motion disaster, the Canaveral Glory accidentally made contact with its neighbor, the Canaveral Legend, already docked and minding its own business. Think bumper boats, but with two gigantic ships and zero prizes for anyone. Thankfully, the damage was pretty minor, just some bumps and scratches to mark the unintended encounter. 6 passengers on the Canaveral Glory ended up with minor injuries, mostly bruises and rattled nerves, quickly treated at the ship's medical center. Both ships eventually set sail again, ready for their next adventures. Just with a new story to tell and a little extra, you wouldn't believe what happened material for the crew. The takeaway? Even the most skilled crews can have a rough day at the dock. Just cross your fingers your ship doesn't decide to make an unexpected friend along the way. You know a cruise has crossed a line into extreme sport territory when your vacation photos look more like disaster movie stills. In February 2016, the Anthem of the Seas, one of Royal Caribbean's colossal floating cities, found itself smack in the middle of an ocean showdown off the coast of North Carolina. With over 6,000 people on board, this giant vessel was battered by waves taller than a 3-story building and winds fierce enough to rip a rhino's toupee right off. Inside, it was chaos unleashed. Furniture skated across rooms like contestants on a wild episode of Dancing with the Stars. Cruise edition. Glass shattered, Seawater poured in, and passengers clung to anything, chairs, tables, even strangers, just to keep from being tossed overboard. Videos of the madness spread online faster than anyone could say, never cruising again. As the ship limped back, 4,500 shaken passengers were left rethinking their love of unlimited buffets, especially when lunch could suddenly become airborne, smashing across the dining hall like a rogue missile. If you thought that was the end of it, think again. In September 2016, the Anthem of the Seas faced another brutal test near Newfoundland. This time, thankfully, no flying sofas, but plenty of seasick waltzes and gravity-defying tumbles. Royal Caribbean went full "this is fine" mode, applauding their state-of-the-art stabilizers and heroic crew for preventing a real-life Titanic redux. But passengers? Not so convinced. Some demanded tighter safety measures, while others quietly started eyeing dry land vacations, where the furniture stays put and the only wave you face are in a pool. Wild ride in Storm Imagine. February 2016. The MS Epsilon was just cruising peacefully from Cherbourg, France to Dublin, totally unaware that Storm Imagine was about to crash the party. This wasn't your average bad weather. This was a full-on hurricane-level beast with zero mercy for ferry rides. Suddenly, the Epsilon found itself on the wildest roller coaster ride across the Irish Sea. The ship rocked, tossed, and spun like a party boat gone rogue, minus the music and pina coladas. Passengers gripped onto anything that wasn't nailed down. Furniture, luggage, and maybe even each other. Inside, it was chaos. Plates and glasses took dive bombs across the dining room like reckless acrobats. The whole scene looked ripped straight out of Titanic, just without the iceberg cameo. As the storm ramped up, windows shattered, doors flew off their hinges like they were made of paper, and water streamed into every crack imaginable. The ship's engines cried for mercy. I can't take this. Yet, somehow, the Epsilon powered through. After what felt like an eternity, 24 brutal hours, the battered ship finally limped into Dublin harbor. Passengers tumbled off, shaken and stirred, but mostly just relieved, rushing away faster than you would say, "Next time, I'm flying." At least they left with one unforgettable story, and probably a lifelong fear of rough seas. Valentine's Day, 2005, a day meant for love, laughter, and chocolate-covered memories. But for the passengers aboard the Grand Voyager, it quickly became a nightmare they would never forget. Setting sail from Tunisia, bound for Barcelona, Spain, the ship glided across the tranquil Balearic Sea, until the ocean decided to unleash its fury. Without warning, a monstrous storm slammed into the Grand Voyager like a heavyweight champion in the ring. Waves towering up to 52 feet crashed over the bow, each strike relentless, as if the sea itself was staging an Olympic event. The storm's wrath shattered the bridge windows and fried the ship's electrical system, plunging the vessel into darkness and silence. With engines dead, stabilizers useless, the Grand Voyager became nothing more than a giant cork tossed mercilessly in a rage-fueled bathtub. Inside, chaos reigned. The ship heeled sharply to one side, flinging passengers and crew like ragdolls caught in a violent whirlwind. Furniture soared through the air, glass shattered into dangerous shards, and any thought of romantic dinners vanished under waves of terror. Clinging desperately to anything steady, everyone braced for the storm's merciless assault. Meanwhile, the medical team worked miracles, patching bruises, tending cuts, and quietly mending a few broken hearts too. Hours dragged on as the relentless tossing continued, pushing everyone to the edge of endurance. Finally, with courage forged in the eye of the storm, the captain sent out a distress call. 2 rescue ships raced to help but were forced to keep their distance. Risking their own crews in the still furious sea was a gamble no one could take. After a grueling 24 hours of hell, the storm's tantrum finally began to subside. The Grand Voyager's crew fired up alone, struggling engine and limped toward Sardinia, battered but alive. When the ship finally docked, it looked as if a hurricane had thrown a wild party inside. Broken glass littered the decks. Furniture lay overturned and carpets squished underfoot. Several passengers required hospital care, but against all odds, every soul survived. This was no Valentine's Day anyone expected. Love lost to a brutal ocean's wrath, and survival won against every impossible wave. Explore the Sea's perfect storm. Imagine signing up for a smooth, relaxing cruise on Explore the Seas, and instead getting caught in a nightmare combo of stomach-churning seas and a viral outbreak. That's exactly what happened in December 2016, when this Royal Caribbean giant threw its 3,000 passengers into a relentless perfect storm. First came the dreaded norovirus, the highly contagious stomach bug that had already knocked out hundreds on board. Picture being trapped in your cabin, feeling like you're on a wild roller coaster with no seatbelt, and battling waves of nausea on top of it. Then, just when you thought it couldn't get worse, hurricane-force wind struck. The ship rocked and pitched through monstrous 30-foot waves. Furniture slid across decks like it was competing on Dancing with the Stars, while plates and glasses crashed in the dining rooms in a slapstick mess. Water poured in through shattered windows, turning the whole ship into a dramatic action scene. Passengers not already fighting the bug could only pray for the storm to end, some probably wishing the virus would just take a break. The overworked medical team scrambled to care for the sick while trying to keep the ship from falling apart, creating a scene straight from a disaster movie. After 24 grueling hours, the Explorer of the Seas finally limped into Sydney like a battered warrior. Passengers were traumatized, the media was furious, and Royal Caribbean faced intense backlash with calls for tighter outbreak controls. Lesson learned? Always check your ship's stormy history before booking your next cruise. In January 2018, the Norwegian breakaway set sail from New York to Bahamas, promising a sunny winter escape. But what unfolded was anything but a vacation. It was a frozen nightmare. The culprit? A brutal bomb cyclone, a ferocious storm packing 40-foot waves and winds clocking in at 125 miles per hour. Instead of steering clear, the captain made a bold, and many would say reckless, decision to power right through the heart of the storm. The ship became a colossal, screaming snowball caught in nature's wrath. Passengers were tossed like rag dolls. Furniture slid wildly across slick decks, and water surged through shattered windows, flooding cabins and public spaces in chaotic cascade that turned the ship into a busted water park. Icicles hung from railings. Sun loungers snapped under pressure, and every inch of the ship bore the scars of battle with the storm. People clung desperately to anything stable, dodging flying objects in a relentless storm of chaos. Many ended up sleeping in hallways or curled in public areas as seasickness and flooding made cabins unlivable. Injuries piled up, broken bones, concussions, as some passengers even tumbled out of their beds amid the turmoil. For 3 days, life jackets became the grim uniform for many, as hope wavered and the ship's interior turned into a soggy battleground. Crew members scrambled to contain the flooding, armed with towels and blankets, but it was like trying to mop up Niagara Falls with a napkin. Meanwhile, the captain's silence left passengers stranded in fear and fury, their perfect vacation slipping into icy chaos. Social media exploded with frantic posts as passengers vented their rage and desperation. For many, the Norwegian breakaway became a symbol of disaster at sea, with vows to never step foot on that ship or any cruise again. The legendary and totally unfortunate Faro. Back in 2015, the SSL Faro, a seasoned warrior of the seas, met its tragic fate, sinking deep beneath the waves after a brutal showdown with a hurricane. Now, you might wonder, wasn't this ship built to handle rough weather? Absolutely. Built in 1975, Faro had weathered countless storms over the decades. But here's the twist. It sailed straight into hurricane when like it was challenging the storm itself. Captain Michael Davidson, a sea veteran with more experience than most could dream of, boldly guided the ship into what turned out to be a merciless Category 4 monster. But this wasn't just another rough ride. The ship was fighting its own battle. Its engine was failing, and years of rust had weakened its structure. The Faro was showing its age badly. When the hurricane hit full force, the situation spiraled out of control. The lifeboats, more suited for calm days and raging tempests, left the crew with little hope. Despite fierce efforts, including desperate evacuation attempts led by Davidson, the ship went down, taking all 33 souls on board with it. The tragedy sparked a wave of maritime safety reforms, a harsh reminder that even the toughest vessels could be undone by age, neglect, and the fury of nature. Today, The Faro rests 15,000 feet underwater, a somber monument of poor decisions and the unforgiving sea. Cruising on a massive ship feels like stepping into a floating palace. Gourmet meals, luxurious spas, dazzling Broadway shows, even casinos where fortunes are won and lost in a heartbeat. You step aboard thinking you're untouchable, like royalty gliding across the sea. But here's the harsh truth. Nature doesn't care about your fancy plans. When a storm hits, it's not just a little rain and wind. It's the ocean itself unleashing fury, as if it's furious with you for no reason at all. Cruise ships are packed with high-tech stabilizers and gadgets designed to keep them steady, but when the weather turns violent, all that tech can feel like nothing more than a paper shield. Imagine this. You're dreaming of a calm day by the pool, cocktail in hand, and suddenly everything erupts into chaos. Chairs and tables fly, glass shatters like fragile hopes, and the serene pool transforms into a swirling whirlpool of madness. The crew scrambles desperately to keep everyone safe, while you dodge rogue furniture like your life depends on it. Because it does. It's like a terrifying theme park ride you never signed up for, where the stakes are deadly serious. This brutal reminder that nature doesn't negotiate with vacations hits home hard, especially when you look at real-life stories. Take the Quark Expedition's Ocean Explorer cruise, for example. Caught in the Drake Passage, it faced monstrous 12-meter waves that slammed the ship, tossing passengers and tilting the vessel dramatically. Miraculously, no one was seriously hurt, and the damage was limited. But the memory of that storm lingers like a warning carved in salt water. So, what do you think? Could any technology truly tame the ocean's wrath? Share your thoughts below, because when nature strikes, everyone has a story.